Okay, awesome. Well, hi everybody. Welcome to IGEC's online panel for social media in esports. It's May 1st, so happy May, everybody. I'm Kelsey Remage, Partnerships Manager over at Invent Global, and I am so incredibly excited to have these wonderful panelists with me here today. I will go around and introduce them all a little bit before they get to talk about themselves a little bit more. And I'll start with Blackbeard, social media manager at 100 Thieves. If you guys don't know what 100 Thieves is, you must be living under a rock because it's been one of the most influential and just puts its best foot forward kind of company for the past couple of years. And it's one of the newest esports orgs that has just made such a groundbreaking stance on the esports scene in not only esports, but just entertainment in general. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Going over to Portillo, the newly promoted senior social media manager over at Cloud9. Thank you for being here. I mean, I think it's, if you don't know who Mateus is, it's he's basically the face of the Cloud9 social media, which is something that has its own brand itself. Like when you think of some of the top social media orgs, Cloud9 is pretty much on top of it for its different kind of approach to social media and how it handles itself. So I'm super happy that he's here. I'm excited to hear his insights that I think are unique to a lot of the other orgs. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. And Wanderless, Sandra. So Sandra is actually the influencer manager over at Team Liquid, but she also worked for social media over at Team Liquid and also Clutch Gaming before it did get rebranded to Dignitas. And Team Liquid, one of the most dominant orgs in esports of recent times. Unfortunately not in League this last split, but overall I think in its record in the past couple of years has been one of the most award-winning leagues, and so I'm really excited to have her inputs as well. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you.
And last but not least, the TikTok king, Dom Gardner from Misfits Gaming Group. It's on Twitter. If you haven't seen his TikToks, you are greatly missing out because it not even just for the Misfits Gaming Group brand, but just for his own brand in general. It's just some of the funniest things I've seen, and I'm honestly saying that. I'm not just like sugarcoating it. He does so many things over at Misfits as their director of digital media. He works for the Mutineers as well and clears everything through them, and also through Florida Mayhem. So he's pretty much he has a lot of things on his hands, but he definitely juggles them pretty well. So thank you so much for being here, Dom.
Thank you for having me, Kelsey, and
Yeah.
I'm glad to be joined by such a star-studded cast. I think everyone in here is awesome.
Yeah, that's facts. So, how's everyone doing? I mean, quarantine has been a little bit crazy. I think for the social media landscape as well, it's something that most of us have never really experienced in the sense of having to navigate content and how to reach your audience in, in an atmosphere where you're not physically there. Everything is online now. When you think about it, in quarantine, most of us are spending most of our times on our phones and computers. I mean, it's not like we weren't doing that before, but now it's even more prevalent. So everyone's eyes are on social media, and it's quite a switch, in my opinion. But I would like to go around and think and ask what you guys think of it, and especially what approaches you guys have been taking, or what approaches you think should be taken in this time because of the current situation. So I'll start with you, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the largest differences that we've noticed is how we film content, right? Like, obviously, 100 Thieves is a very content-heavy org. We can't have 5-6 people there from production filming every content house video now. It's all done online, right? And to some extent, I think it's important to continue the cadence of what you were doing before and kind of act as a distraction, because if there's one thing that I know from playing video games, it's that I go to that to just like detach for a little bit. Get to be a guardian throwing supers everywhere. Like, I don't want to always be reminded that there is just this world history changing event happening outside. And I think bringing some levity and kind of making it a little bit more tolerable, that's where social media steps in. and we can still connect with each other and just bring everything together.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Especially, yeah, I think in the news right now, all you hear is about the coronavirus. And it is something that is super important still, even though it's been, over a month and a half that we've been in quarantine now. But I do super value the importance of having that escape and having this content that brings that for us. What about you, Mateus?
I feel like uh, the biggest change was like mostly because I was always with my players. I did everything with my players. I went to the LCS with my players. I stayed at the office with the players. Uh, so for me, the biggest change was like I couldn't do my work as I was doing in the past. So like I had to adapt to another types of like how I'm gonna get pictures, how I'm gonna make like funny stuff with the players. Uh, so it was pretty tough for me in the beginning, but like I started to understand that everyone had to work from home and start making like doing plans uh, around like remote kind of content, and it was something that like in the beginning was kind of hard, but it became normal in
Mm-hmm.
over time, you know.
Yeah.
So like, and also like I feel that we have a lot of influence on social media, like all the platforms. Like we cannot just, as Black people say, like stay together in a room with 6 people. We have to like tell the fans that they should also be practicing social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
And so like um how do I say that? It's like we influence them a lot, you know.
Yeah. No, something that I noticed with Cloud9 is I remember watching the Scriblio content that was made recently. And it's almost like interesting when you think about it because sometimes when you watch team content and they put all the players in a room, it's almost an unnatural feeling because that's not what they're usually doing. Like, obviously, on their downtime, they're talking to each other, having these conversations, and hanging out normally, but it's not for content. And I think it's fair to say a lot of the players don't particularly enjoy doing a lot of team content, even though it's needed. They're like, I'd rather be gaming, and that's totally understandable. But I feel like with this shift to online stuff, like Scriblio, something super casual, super fun, it almost puts them in a more natural state. So
And if you
they're. Go ahead.
oh sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean if you think like it's basically like the remote control, for example, the Scribble one, if you think it's basically like you and your friends on Discord like playing, but like it's with the players. So, like it's I don't know. I feel it's funny with players
Mm-hmm.
because like they're always super. Uh, they people don't see their faces like that. Like there's that side of them because they're always playing. So like I don't know, it's fun for me to see those
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
No, it feels like almost when you're online, it's just like a guard is dropped down. It's not like this pressure to like perform under like a certain circumstance. It's just like you're just chilling with your friends, like you said. So I mean, I definitely feel that. I spend most of my time on Discord now, and yeah, it's improved a lot of my friendships. Crazily, it definitely has. Sandra, you're all the way over on the East Coast now, so you have to use Discord to talk to your friends and all of that, and your players as well. So how has that affected you at Team Liquid?
Yeah, it's a little bit rough. It's weird because I'm staying with my family right now. And they're all on normal schedules, and I'm on like this weird shifted schedule where I'm like 3 hours behind them. So, um, it's definitely I think I think overall quarantine has probably increased a lot of our workloads because like traditionally like me and Mateus, for example, a lot of our work revolves around in person and events, and so like we focus all our time on like LCS and like whatever the player's schedule is. That's like very similar to what our schedule is. And now that everything's online, it's like way different. We kind of have to be on all the time in a sense. But yeah, I think at least for us on Team Liquid, a large part of our focus of shift has shifted um, towards enhancing like the online experience for fans. So, like historically, we really pride ourselves on giving really good fan experience at LCS, for example. Like we're always tailgating, always trying to think of new stuff to do with our fans there. And this is kind of, I guess, kind of seen as an opportunity for us to connect even more with our fans who are not able to attend to LCS or not able to come out to events like that. So what we've been doing is a lot more community stuff on our Twitch channel, on our Discord, hosting tournaments for our for fans and the community to participate in, stuff like that. Another thing that you notice is like a lot more people are like jumping into streaming now, or like players who don't normally stream as much or like streaming a lot more because of the situation, which is I mean really great for them and their channels and their brands, but it also kind of gives us way more digital content to work with.
Yeah, no, I've been noticing a lot of players switching to streaming, which these, like a lot of, for example, I've noticed Bjergsen, who, if you don't know, was like one of the most popular League of Legends players to ever exist, especially in NA. He is starting to stream more, which is great content, but he barely streams in general. So now he's streaming more, and it's like he's obviously very talented. He has a huge following base, and that's a huge source of content for TSM and other teams. And so it's really nice to see that, especially someone at home just doing work all the time. I love to have Twitch in the background, and so it's nice to finally see my favorite players streaming more often, so I have that interaction. And especially now since LCS is over, because League is my primary esport that I do enjoy, it's like it's filling that void for sure, besides my my adequate play of Valorant, but on a more professional level. But speaking of adaptability, you know, so many teams are adapting to this new world that esports has kind of thrust itself in. And nothing more than Overwatch, who had this huge plan for how they're going to run their season, which was one giant long season where they travel all over the world. And I remember before Dom left us in California to Florida to go work, we had this conversation where he was just so excited to travel and do all these really cool things, and all of that has halted. So basically their whole entire plan of making this more like a professional sports team and doing this kind of innovative practice that we don't see with too many esports is now diminished, and they're doing it from home, if just online, if from my understanding. Is that still correct? Yeah, so obviously it's a huge different landscape, and I'm sure you had to pivot pretty much entirely to a different direction. So can you talk a little bit about that and kind of what steps you've taken, especially in that kind of environment?
So for us personally, well, actually, I guess it speaks to everyone in both leagues, both CDL and Overwatch League face that issue currently. Luckily, we got to get a few of those home games out of the way already. So like we've already experienced some of the travel, we've gotten some of the events down. So it's like we see what the format looks like, and we can see the success that comes from it. In terms of like pivoting now, it's not so much like the actual events themselves being canceled that's really the biggest issue that we face. It's more like all the things that were associated with those events now become harder to deal with. Things like, you know, sponsorship deliverables, because there's certain assets and signage and things you sell to these sponsors that need to be taken care of at your event. But if that event no longer exists, you still need to make good on that sponsor deliverable. So it like the way that we had to pivot was like we had to find ways to attach these sponsors to like, you know, some of our content ideas or things that happen in game or streams, or come up with like, you know, other tournament formats just to like make sure in the end everybody's happy with that. Like, I mean, the reality of the situation is everybody has to stay home, and everyone should understand that by this point. So I mean, it's not something that's really worth being upset about, because like, I mean, like, what are we gonna do? We're just gonna say like, all right, screw it, let's just all go throw the tournament in person anyway. Like that's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it sucks for right now, but you know, hopefully before the year is over, everything will be back on track, and it's just like, you know, it's a hurdle right now.
Yeah, no, of course. Like working in partnerships for us, especially, like if you guys aren't familiar with IGEC, it's usually a in-person conference event. And so finding sponsors for us now, thankfully, by the way, shameless plug, HyperX, thank you so much for sponsoring this. They gave us some beautiful headphones and mics, perfect pivot. But yeah, it's really hard to sell yourself as a company if you're like, our main event has essentially been canceled, and now we're doing weekly streams, and so we do get to send that off and use that, but it's a huge source of revenue that's kind of limited at that point, and you have to be creative with finding ways to really talk to companies, talk to partners, and say, you know, we're still going to get those viewership numbers, we're still going to get everything that you need so that we both do find success from this. So yeah, I feel that, trust me. Yeah, no, it's been something that's quite interesting to navigate, because I feel like since the shift happens, a lot of pressure is put on these social media faces, I guess you could say. Like I said before, you know, I think Mateus has become one-in-one with Cloud9 social media, you know, like you don't think of one without the other. But before all that, before Mateus came to Cloud9, before you guys came to your respective teams, you know, there was an original team, and especially with something like 100 Thieves, John, and I do want to come to you about this, it was a new org. It was something that obviously has been talked about in the past, and what I'm trying to ask you is, like, how do you build a brand up from the ground? You know, obviously everyone had an idea of what they wanted to do with 100 Thieves. I think that was always very clear. But you still have to build that identity. What was your process with that, and how has it been difficult? Well, I feel like, I don't know, has it been difficult?
Well, so I mean, with 100 Thieves specifically, it was sort of modeled. I came in after it had already been established for about a year and a half,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't necessarily build it, but 100 Thieves as a brand was very much modeled after Nade Shot and how he wanted to build an extension and a platform that reflected his tastes, his interests, his kind of overall social reach, right? And I mean, sliding into that, the identity was very, very well established already. So I was thankful for that. But there's a certain tone that you have to develop that both speaks authentically to the brand that you're representing, and also, like, it allows you to have a little bit of flavor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't want to. It's with 100 Thieves specifically, a lot of the employees, they have this LA culture, this LA vibe, they perfectly embody what it is to have an identity that 100 Thieves has. So I mean, it's easy when you have that starting block. I think establishing tone is what comes next, right? And it's about making sure that you are authentic to that overall identity while still portraying things in a way that you think speaks to the fans that you've gathered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
No, yeah, I agree with that. I feel like it's a difficult balance to appease everyone and then also build your brand and build your audience that you particularly want, because you have to have like a win-lose kind of factor there, where it's like, what are you willing to compromise on to build your brand in a certain way that you want, but also get to the most people as possible.
and with a brand like 100 Thieves, it makes it extremely hard to kind of work remote, right?
Mm-hmm.
People don't think of social media manager as like as something that needs to be on site necessarily. I know a lot of social people across the industry work remotely, but with this specific brand, you can't really fake it. If you're not part of that vibe, that culture, that overall feel, it's really hard to speak like you are. So it's presented a unique set of challenges, and I'm excited that we have like such a supportive team here that really helped me get acclimated and introduced me to something that I'm not normally a fashionable person. I'm really glad we had people that kind of got me acclimated here, got me all set up.
Yeah, no, actually, it's so weird when I'm walking down the street or just like at the mall and I see 100 Thieves gear, because like for us that's normal. We're just like, everyone has something of 100 Thieves, you know. I mean, I can't complain. It looks great, and so it's like I remember I was at like Coachella or something last year. It was something like bizarre, and I just see like 100 Thieves jacket, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like of course that's normal. It's not that wouldn't happen, but it just caught me off guard where I'm just like, wow, this is just a normal thing that people wear. It's like been integrated into culture so easily. Yeah,
We out there, man.
it's crazy. No, you guys are doing great, honestly.
Yeah.
I feel like, especially, I just bought the Puma windbreaker from Cloud9 that they just came out with that collab, and yeah, just it's crazy. I know me and Dom have talked about it too, a bunch of ways to start rebranding merch and how to get merch out there more and to get to a wider audience. And it's crazy to see how back in the day when esports were still really young and it was still really developing, how merch wasn't even it was just jerseys. Like, oh yeah, you got a jersey? Yeah, I got a jersey too. But now it's like we have our own merch lines that are not only like successful but also fashion forward, that you see normal people wearing, which is, I love it. I love it. Now I can wear all my stuff outside and people are on like, what are you wearing? And I'm just like, okay, never mind. But yeah, no, I definitely feel that, especially with and how they're integrating also just brands like Puma, like Marvel with Liquid, making that into something that they can use on social media. And you know, if you're scrolling on Twitter, especially with how oh my god, I can't even think of it. How social media works and ads work today. I'm totally blanking on the word I'm thinking of. But you know, if you're a Marvel fan and you're scrolling and you know nothing about esports, and then you see an ad for Team Liquid X Marvel wear, it's another step that social media has kind of like put forward, where you can have no idea what Team Liquid was, but if you see the jersey, they look pretty rad, and you're just like, I want this, but where does it come from? And so you have that source as well, which is just I don't know. It's just like esports never ceases to amaze me where we've come from, and I think
Agreed.
I think everyone can kind of feel that for sure. Yeah. Well, if I do want to be honest, the main reason I grabbed most of you guys is because you guys have social medias that I think are a lot different than most of the orgs out there. Like we were talking a little bit before the panel. Before, it seemed like a lot of orgs were very cut and dry. You know, everyone had the same thing that they always posted, and you didn't really deviate too much from it because there wasn't anything that was really groundbreaking in the sense of pushing the boundaries. And I do want to come to you guys because I think some of the people on this panel have pushed the boundaries of social media and what's that defined in the sense of being a professional org and putting out professional tweets, and then also being humorous. You know, Porty, you have one of the most dry humor social medias that I have ever seen, and I love it because it works. And it's not, and you've developed this way where it's not pushing it to the point where it's not okay and where it's inappropriate. You found this balance. And what's that like? Because I know if I did that, I would just struggle so much for sure.
I did a lot of mistakes when I was adding words, like a lot. Dude, my tweets were
Immortals.
like the kid. I was a bold person in the past. I was like, I didn't think about like the consequences of posting tweets of like for example, mocking players, or which I feel like it's kind of weird when you don't have a storyline behind. But yeah, like yeah, I was gonna talk about my tweet that got me fired, but it's okay.
Honestly,
Can I-
yeah, you can't talk about it. I mean, like, I was gonna bring it up. Honestly, I should have told you before, but I was gonna be like, you know, it's iconic now. Literally, when everyone talks about a bad social media slip up, it's kind of like, you know, on Reddit where it's like you always expect like the first comment, like that's it. It's just like, I'm sorry, the person that tweeted this.
It became a copy paste nowadays, and like
Yeah.
because everyone thought it was me tweeting for the account, like joking stuff. But like talking about professional tweets and unprofessional tweets, sorry.
Yeah.
I feel like when you work at a social media, I feel like most of the things are like common sense in the vast majority of this job. Like, for example, I just talked about a tweet I made to a player when I was at Immortals. It was like a player from Fnatic. Like, I didn't think on the consequences of it, and like I probably didn't have like empathy, like when I did a tweet, because like not empathy, but like the backlash was huge,
Mhm.
and like that's not something you say to. I want to say more stuff like I'm trying to forget. I'm trying to remember what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Like uh, there's a line you can cross. You
Yeah.
cannot cross. Like there. I wanted to bring more examples. I should have brought more examples.
Well, it's weird. It's weird in today's culture because it is such like a cancel culture. Like if you do one wrong thing, like your career could be over.
Yeah, you're gonna get a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
Yeah.
backlash.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's so difficult navigating this like delicate border where like for example, Porty, like you have great relationships with all your players. So if you're making fun of Niski out there, like people know you guys have that like boundary there. But sometimes when it's like in between different orgs and bantering there, I know Dom, you do this all the time with the other Overwatch teams. Like it's always in between orgs where it's like everyone's throwing spice one way and the other way. But not everyone understands that, and I feel like is it something where like you have to go to them first and be like, hey, your social media manager, like put me in contact with them. I need to get to know them so I understand their humor. Or do you just go for it and you're just like, I hope for the best, and if I get canceled, we'll deal with it later.
No, there's a certain finesse to it. I mean, you're not gonna be the rank 1 team and then look at like the rank 18 team and be like, you know what, I'm about to say something to these dudes. They haven't talked to us and like, they haven't said anything in 8 weeks, but you know what, I'm feeling it, so here it comes. Like, there's a certain point where it's like you don't want to be that person that's like kicking someone when they're down. Like, if an org is dealing with a lot right now, you don't want to like bring more negative light to an issue that someone has. But
Mhm.
then also like piggybacking off of what Porty said is that like you don't necessarily want to take these kind of like banter battles when there's no storyline there,
Yeah.
because it just kind of comes off as like really random. Whereas if you have a little bit more substance to it, it allows the fans to also engage with it. Like, say you have an ongoing rivalry with the team, like back when there was the whole like TSM CLG rivalry. Like, if they were bantering all the time, people would be like, oh, well, I mean, this makes perfect sense. Like, they've
Mhm.
always been rivals. You take it to Overwatch League, there's 2 Texas teams. Of course they're going to talk about each other. But, like, think about if the Texas team is like, hey, yo, New York, we got an issue with you. It's like, you're New York. You're like, what do you want from me? Like, like that, and that's just the way it comes off. So, like, you just always have to make sure there's, like, a little bit more substance to it. And you also kind of have to, like, take a second and like dial it back and be like, okay, is this actually funny or am I just talking because I want engagement? If you're just talking because you want engagement, just like, I don't know, post a random meme instead. Like, don't, and also like pick your battles wisely, because you don't want to go for someone and then have them have better material prepared for you,
Yeah.
because then you just look like a fool on the timeline and now you're just worse overall.
That's so funny. Yeah, and I want to switch it almost. So you were talking about like if you're the number 1 team, like yeah, yelling at the number 8 team and like causing ruckus with them when it's like yeah they're already down. How do you navigate it when you're on the other side? And it'll be a little bit of call out, but for example, Sandra with Team Liquid, like they ended up 9th in LCS this year, and it was. I mean, like, and I'm not like bashing any of the players or anything like that. It was a weird season. Like things didn't click. Happens. It happens to everybody. And so when you're in that kind of position, how I know you don't do social media anymore and so you don't really have like control over that, but if you were in that kind of position, what's the process of making banter with other teams without having the backlash of fans being like, well, like, why are you talking? You're 9th. Why are you talking? You had a bad season. Especially coming from an org that has historically performed so well. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, so I guess to speak to like how I sort of navigate I get that I don't know, I guess drop. What we really try to do is like as an org, I guess part of our identity is sorry, I don't know if my dogs. They're
Totally
really
going off.
We're all working from home. You're fine.
Mhm.
We really pride ourselves on having, I guess, like a strong connection with our community, and that's what's really important to us. And so, a large part of how we sort of navigated that and like reacted to the situation was just being really honest and trying to be as transparent as possible with the community about like what the issues are. I think for me personally, something that is really important when it comes to social media and messaging is like I've been working, with teams for a while. I've been working with players for a long time, and it's really important for me to, as like the face, I guess, as you say, to like display to the audience that the team, the players are humans too, and like I think that vulnerability is not only really crucial to show, but also like very relatable for fans, and that's like sort of an important take that I've taken. It's like a really strong one that I took when we were at Worlds, for example, and didn't make it out of groups again. But
Yeah.
it was just like, especially being there and witnessing it all happen. It's like no matter what, like all these players are here and all these teams are here because this is what they're passionate about, and they work really hard to be where they are, and work really hard to, you know, try to get as far as possible. And when it comes to the way that fans call out teams and players in social media, it's like a lot. I don't know. To me, it feels like a lot of them don't really consider that these people are also human, and they
Oh yeah.
yeah, and so that's a big part of like what I try to embody when it comes to teams that are at the bottom. And I think Clutch was a really good example of it when I was there as well. So yeah, I think and to answer your question about the banner, like banter, I guess like we didn't really, I don't think we really engaged too much in banter as when we were at the bottom. And if we did, it was mostly like Mateus and Dom said, like with a storyline there. So like for us, we're very fortunate that we have that storyline like between us, Cloud9, and Fnatic and G2. Like we're always four of us bantering amongst each other, it's a lot of fun. It's really great, and I think the fans really enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I actually just thought of a question while we were talking about that has to do with social media, not only on the org level, but also the player level. And I think, Sandra, you would also be great for this since you are an influencer manager. After a split like that, right? And like I think for all the orgs here, we've all had splits like that where we didn't do our best, a player didn't do really too well. That last tweet after a game or after a series or after the whole split where it's like we messed up, I messed up. A lot of people come into criticism for how they kind of word things, especially as we see in like totally kind of unrelated but also kind of related in like apology videos that you see on YouTube that like beauty gurus or something like that they make. That comes into so much scrutiny of how it's kind of portrayed and how you format it. When that happens, what, in your opinion, is the best way to address the situation? Do you, not so much like a PR disaster, but more of, it was a bad season? Because I think we've all heard that, I'm going to try better next season. I know what I did wrong. Is that the correct approach? Because obviously people are going to be upset. Obviously fans are going to come for the players' heads and be like, why didn't she win MVP this year? What's the process in your guys' eyes of acknowledging the mistake but also working towards being better, but also convincing your audience that you're gonna get better?
I mean, like, I think that as you say, cookie cutter of like, we're gonna try better next year it's very generic, but you also have to understand that in their hearts, like that is actually how they feel. And there's a lot more to it, obviously, and I think that the messaging around it needs to be a lot more personal than just we didn't do as well as we should have and we're gonna try better. But that's the basis, right? And then you kind of build off of it. So like I think it's really important to be able to address issues that you had and be really honest about them, be open about them, I think that a big part of it is also, you know, appreciating the fans, thanking them for sticking with you, apologizing to them for not meeting their standards. And then I think like I'll just give like one really good example. So when we were at Worlds, right, we didn't make it out of groups, and everyone was really bummed out. There was a lot of criticism from the fans, and Peter Doublelift, he tweeted out a video of himself talking about the issues that we ran into, and I think the biggest part of the video for me was when he said, you know, don't, um, you know, don't put all the blame on like X or like Y, right? This is like, um, you know, this is a team thing. You know, it's not on any one player, and it's really important. And I actually think what he might have said, and I can't remember exactly, but I think he might have said like not to blame his teammates.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
That
as well.
was really, you know, that I think that was like a really personal message to put out there, and a lot of people really appreciated it.
Yeah. Do you think it's better to be more specific about your problems or leave it to be more generic in that kind of situation?
I mean, I think fans like to see it be more specific. I think overall in apologies, like, you should be more specific up to a certain extent. Like, obviously, you're not gonna leak things that you don't want to leak, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, being too generic, then that just lends itself to back to like being a cookie cutter response to losing.
Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think transparency is key, right? You nailed it. When it comes to, and it doesn't necessarily have to come from the organization, right? Like we have Papa Smithy this year as our general manager for League of Legends. Absolutely incredible personality, been a force of nature internally, and him, like the way he speaks in our content, the way he speaks on Twitter, like 100 Thieves, obviously, like fans know that if we're losing, we aren't blind, and he vocalizes that and he approaches that and puts a face to the changes that are being made or not made, or he helps like contextualize a lot of that.
Yeah.
And I think being able to be transparent with certain figures on a team, or whether it is through the organizational account, that's by far the best way to address, like, if fans are concerned about how the team has been performing, like, just speak to it. Like, nobody at the organization doesn't have a Twitter. Like, they see feedback, right? So it's not like we're gonna pretend like it isn't happening. Like, let's address it.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think I totally agree with that. Let's shift to something a little bit more extreme, PR nightmares. So something crazy happened. We were talking about this before the stream started, and he knows I'm gonna come to him, but or it's not even like a PR nightmare, but it's just something major where like it's not, you didn't lose a season. What I'm referring to is Cloud9 lost their probably biggest branded player in Sneaky. Like, it was huge. It wasn't like a PR nightmare, but everyone was upset. And you know, sometimes like decisions like that have to be made, but then all the pressure is put on social media because that's where the outlet is. And so when they announce that, they get all the backlash. And I swear to God, even still, when Cloud9 posts stuff, you will always see at least one or two comments like "bring back Sneaky" and all that stuff. Porty, what's that feel like? Because I can't imagine it feels too good.
I felt that was the worst times as a social media manager like I have ever felt. Everything we post on social media was straight like, yeah, but what about Sneaky? What about him? Like, because we also made up, like, we announced Sven before announcing the next steps of Sneaky, because he was also deciding like what he was gonna do with his future, because he already knew that he was not gonna be on the main roster. So like, it was an intense like 2-3 weeks, because like some people are gonna forget, but like some other fans, they're not gonna forget at all.
Yeah.
Because also like Cloud9 was built around Sneaky. Sneaky wasn't the first roster that Cloud9 was in 2013, I think.
Yeah.
And like it was pretty harsh. It's pretty harsh or hard? I don't know. I mean, it was
It's
pretty
harsh.
difficult.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got it. You got it.
It was pretty difficult, and like uh, one of the things that made this go like in a better situation was when Jack tweeted something with the words of Sneak had four like has four things to choose, four ways to choose in his path or something.
Mhm.
And like because he, as Blackbeard said, transparency is the best thing. So he was very transparent with the fans. He said like what's gonna happen. And but like I feel that for other like PR disasters, this situation was kind of different from like other PR disasters I've seen.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah. Of
yeah,
course.
because like I was talking to Dylan about with Dylan about this yesterday, and we were like, feel that the best situation to address a PR disaster is like get everyone off social, get everyone together and be like, yo, here's the plan. We're gonna make an apology, and you formulate an apology, make sure like the player or like whatever happened, like admit the fault and say then like it's a big process, it's a big PR process. Uh, don't can you remind me a little bit what
Well, for
end of
example, I've just for example thrown out there on Boston Uprising. Muffin, I want to say, is that how you saying his name? Like
I think it is.
Muffin.
Muffin.
Muffin,
Like you
Muffin.
know when you have something like that where it's like that's not something anyone wants to talk about. We have, like, yeah. Sorry I interrupted you, Dom.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, but yeah, what's like obviously, hopefully, none of us will ever experience something like that because that's pretty unfortunate, or just anything like that where it does involve the law and it's yeah. What do you even do in that situation? Because even as a social media manager, it wasn't you who did that. It wasn't anybody but the person. But every single person on that team is gonna come into scrutiny. Do they stop streaming? Do you have to run this whole PR kind of class to make sure what you can say, what you can't say? And in general, as someone who is like taken kind of independent of the situation at hand, if you have like a different view on something and your team or org is pushing for a different view to be broadcast that maybe you believe in, how do you navigate that? What's like, have you ever come into a situation, any of you guys, where you've been in that kind of situation?
Yeah, well, not not to that extent, but like Porty was saying just now, I think what it really comes down to is you need to just kind of get all your ducks in a row, right? Like you have to pull everyone off of social media. You need to discuss amongst the entirety of your organization, like, okay, here's the situation. How are we gonna take care of this? Like, there's a couple ways you can go about it. There's always the option where people go the radio silence route, where it's like, okay, we're just not gonna say anything at all, and we just
Please
hope that
forget,
this
please
blows
forget.
over. Yeah, like we just hope this blows over. There's always that approach, but then there's also like the more calculated approach to it, where it's like, hey, here's what went wrong. How much can we tell to the fans? How do we deliver that to the fans? Let's make sure that we admit the ways that we were wrong, and let's not try to further defend our point. Let's just admit fault here,
Mm-hmm.
and then say that we're gonna do better and take actionable steps to actually be better. But like you can't, like the way this industry works is you don't have the luxury of just stopping anything that you're doing. Like the content has to continue, the posts have to come out, because if you don't put these things out, it's a detriment to your organization,
Yeah.
and you're worse off if you just try to stop. So it's like you kind of, if it's something that was that major, you cut all ties and association with whatever that problem was, but then you continue to push forward. You don't push anything that like makes fans reminiscent of that situation. You just keep going on and going on, because eventually with time there's going to be a select few that like just hold on to these small things that happen to you, and they're always going to mention it. But there's going to be a bigger majority of people that are more just like, hey, this player or this team or this person messed up, and you guys took action, you did what you could to fix it. And the reality, because it's like, say a player says something negative on stream, right? And like, of course, they issue an apology. Maybe there's a fine, maybe there's a suspension, and worst case scenario, they get cut from the team. Like, in reality, what more can you actually do to fix that situation than those steps there? Like, you're not going to keep pressing the issue. Like, you just have to move forward every single time. So I think it's just assess the problem, get everyone on the same page, and like, you always have to set like a hard endpoint too. Be like, okay, we're gonna talk about this right now, and this is gonna be the one time that we talk about it. We're gonna put everything out, and that's the end of it. Like, don't talk about it with your friends. Don't talk about it with like whoever else behind the scenes. Just let it go. Let's just all move forward. So I think like that's the best way to go about those things.
Yeah. I remember when I was in Immortals and that unfortunate event with like Kenji, the CS:GO player that tweeted like "prove it" or the rest. He tweeted that stuff, and like it was actually so bad. People were like relating him to Immortals, of course, and you're like, okay, so what are we gonna do now? Like, what's the next step? So like, he got he they were took care of him, like they took action against him, and the next step for us was like to put out I think we put out a video with Noah Winston saying like, well, the consequences of CS:GO, like of the CS:GO team, what was gonna happen, like why would he do that, and like fans were like, oh yeah, I think that was the right decision. I'm gonna keep supporting the org. Uh, Excited to see the next steps. So, like the situation was fixed. So like that's how we addressed the PR. And then I made a tweet and like.
And now here we are.
And now
And
we're
people are like,
feeling
bro, we just fixed it. You just tweeted that? Like, come on.
Okay, well, actually, that brings up a huge point that it might be weird to ask, but okay, like, so say nothing like too crazy happened, but it was something big enough where they had to make an official apology by the team, and it was something that was on Reddit for a while, in the public's eye a bunch. When is it ever okay, or is it ever okay to use that as like joke material in the future? Obviously, it does differ like case by case, but like
I think
would
it
address
depends a lot of timing. For
Yeah.
example, if we like, it's been 3 years since that the unfortunate event with Kenji happened, the tweet.
Yeah.
But like, if people say like prove it or like dot dot dot, people are gonna be laughing about it. But like, I feel that timing is something essential.
Mhm.
My tweet was bad because of timing.
Yeah.
Like we literally released the video on the day I tweeted. So like, it was
Big brain.
a bad time, a really bad timing.
Yeah.
Like, terrible.
He's having flashbacks right now. He's
I'm
just like,
trying to
oh, man.
remember of more examples of like tweets that like came in a bad timing. But I can't remember right now. Not about me, but like other social media.
No, I think I actually saw that article and I used it in a deck internally at one point. Yeah. But no, I mean, I think a lot of teams still overlook the importance and the value of PR training for staff and for players. I don't think nearly enough organizations do that sort of training proactively. I know at 100 Thieves, we definitely went through that to a large extent. And I mean, there are varying degrees of PR issues, right? Like you just have to roll with it. And as Dom said, like I think in this day and age, like I feel like you used to be able to get away with like the "we're very sorry" approach. It's not like that anymore. You have to be ready to take actions to make sure that this just doesn't happen again. If it's that inexcusable, you have to treat it like that. And I think there is less of a forgiving nature around those things now. So you're seeing a lot more direct action taken when there's something approaching like a catastrophic level of PR issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember Selena from 100 Thieves was on one of our earlier panels, and she was talking to us about how she did have to go through PR training, which I think is brilliant of orgs to start implementing, especially in today's world where everything is taken so seriously when said, especially on a personal level if you do work for an org. Something that I actually feel in my personal experience that I respond to pretty well is when an issue arises and the team owner makes a video explaining the situation, what they're going to do about it, and takes ownership. Like with Mateus was talking about the whole sneaky situation when Jack came out with a tweet, talked about it. Recently we even had with the double lift trade, Steve came out with a whole video explaining what happened, explaining what Team Liquid's goals were for the next split. And what do you guys think about team owners and kind of taking that role? Because they are the head of the company. Like, when you think of Optic, well, you used to think of Hex, and now he's not there anymore, but, you know, but, you know, they have, we're like 100 Thieves. You think of Nade Shot, you know? It's like, they're icons.
Exactly.
And them taking ownership, is that something that you guys like to see, almost? Like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if they're the face of the company, right? Like, it makes sense that to some extent they should play a part in addressing things when they come up. And I think we're all very lucky that we have like pretty prominent faces for our organizations for the most part. Like, when they make a video, you know to pay attention. So, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, dude.
No, you're good. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Like, Steve is really, really great about it, and the great thing about Steve too is that he also is really connected with the community. That's like a big reason why the community is such a big part of our brand. But you know, the fans are really important to him, and he's sure that he's always there to listen to them, and that's also a big reason why they respond so well to when he does put out videos like that, or speaks to them on social media, or any of those things. I think that his involvement with that stuff is really crucial to the way that we are able to relay those messages, for sure.
But yeah, no, I feel like we've covered a lot of things, from the good to the bad of social media and just how things are used to relay a message when it's needed to. But I do want to come to each of you guys and ask, right now in the social media landscape, what do you think is lacking by orgs or by players or any of the above? Something that you would like to see implemented more, maybe a rebrand or some kind of shift. I know even with the new rise of platforms like TikTok, it's like, do we want to see more of that? Like, what do you think can project or can push social media to new heights? And I'll start with
For me personally, it's really, I would just love for players to actually utilize the social medias that they do have. Like, you know, that I get this question a lot from players. They're always like, well, how do I tweet? What do I tweet? Like, that's such an open-ended question, and it's such an easy one to answer to me, because it's like, you tweet whatever the heck you want to tweet. Like, if you want to talk about what you had for dinner, go for it. That's a tweet. You want to talk about something funny you did with one of your teammates, go for it. Like, the fans want to know more about you as a player, and they like you already. That's why they follow you. Like, whatever you are going to say, they're prepared to listen. So use your social media, and don't think about it like as something that's like a sponsorship deliverable every time, or it's like for us. It's not really for us. Like, yeah, if you make the tweet, we might quote retweet it and use it for, like, you know, our team socials, but like at the end of the day, they're building their own personal brands here. And like, that's what we're trying to help them do. We're trying to help them build out their brand so that they have a presence beyond being on our team. Like, it's not just like, you know, right now you're on 100 Thieves, you're on Liquid, you're on Cloud9, but what happens when you get traded, or what happens when something happens? Like, you know, for some reason you're not part of this anymore. If you don't have any presence and people aren't really familiar with who you are, you're going to have a hard time in the future, because people are just going to be like, I don't really know anything about this dude, therefore I actually don't even really care. So yeah, so it's really just, you know, use the social media that you do have and just stay active. And as far as like jumping on other social media platforms, I think if you don't necessarily have the manpower for it, or you don't have a plan that's sustainable on the platform, probably don't get on it. Like, I don't think everyone needs to be on TikTok, because not a lot of people are like even leveraging TikTok in a way where it's beneficial for their organization, or like, you know, they're able to monetize it. That's not even happening yet. So yeah, the biggest thing is just like players and stuff just need to actually be active on their socials, from my perspective.
Yeah, agreeable. What about you, Sandra?
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar. I think overall, just like more personality on the player side and on the team side. I think, like, for players, like Dom said, they don't really, a lot of them not all of them, because a lot of them are good about it, but a lot of them also don't, make the time to put effort into their social media, or they don't see the value in it, or they're just like too focused on grinding and practicing. Um, but like you said, it's just like such an important part of growing their brand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like I've heard a lot like from like years ago up till now, like people say all the time like, oh, like pro players don't have personalities, or like extrovert player, they don't have a personality. Like that's just not true. Everyone has a personality. They just need to display it, to like share it with the audience, right? um and I guess on on the team side, like it's also part of the team's job to learn about those personalities and figure out how to share those with the audience, because a lot of players don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll see the teams with like um, the best content, and the best player focused content, and everyone here is a really great example of it. They do their best to capture that like essence of the personalities behind the faces behind the computers. So yeah.
Yeah. Mateus?
You know, players players have to start using more social media, and like I try to push all my players to tweet at least one thing a day, but it's so hard because they don't want to. But yeah, it's fine. Uh, but yeah, like I was talking to one of the TFT players we have, Jay Shred. He's much older than the like most of the players in our organization. Our organization has like 19, 20, 21 years old players, and I don't think they still understand how important it is to build their brand and like be active on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to this TFT player. He was like, "Dude, I was a player. I'm 28 right now, and I actually understand that my career as a player is over. And I was a coach, and now I'm a TFT player again. But I understand that like after being a player, there's nothing else you can do if you don't build a brand. Uh, like YouTube, Twitch, um, I'll say mostly Twitter, and of course, always the best platform. Uh, he has to build his brand there. Like I have to build my brand here, because if I don't do anything, no one's gonna remember of who I am. So like, and I feel that's actually very true. If you're a player and like when you start playing, what else are you gonna do? Like you're either gonna transition to a coach, most of the times like content creation, and rarely you're gonna like leave esports. Not rarely, but like
Mm-hmm.
it's not most of the case because people want to stay in esports. Um, so I'm not gonna say like that's a tip or like, but players, I feel like players before they join, like when they join an organization, they have to have uh, a social media best practices. Let's say like that. They have to understand why we post this, why they need to retweet this, why are they in content pieces,
Mm-hmm.
why we need to post pictures of them, why we need to post videos of them, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, because they need to understand that we're trying to build their image, and at the same time we're trying to like uh make content with them, like
Yeah.
make them more of our brand.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
Yeah.
they need to
John?
understand that.
Yeah. John, do you think players too?
Yeah, well, I mean, to some extent, yeah, right? Like you
Yeah.
see them get a little bit older into their later 20s, maybe early 30s, and hindsight's 2020 at that point. They're starting to realize, um, maybe building a brand so I can continue to have a career in esports is an important thing. Whereas if you can get that buy-in from a player that's like 17, 19 and get them to build that massive brand early, their career in esports is exponentially longer.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Agree.
think that that's huge. If you can get players on the up, like coming up in the scene to really start leveraging their momentum like accurately, I think it's massive. But the other big thing that I think is kind of missing or is a massive oversight on a lot of orgs' parts is video content, right? I will beat this drum until the day I die. Video content. Don't tell me that you won that match with a scoreboard graphic. Show me you won that match with the Nexus exploding. You know? Show me you won that CS:GO match from one of your players just absolutely turning and burning somebody. I mean, I want to see those highlights. I don't if I miss the game, I want to see what happened on your social media. And I think that just doesn't happen enough. So I want to see more of that. I want more content in general. And I mean, I get it right now. OWL teams, CDL teams, they're struggling against, you know, having the ability to live clip a lot of that stuff on YouTube. There are ways to get around that, right? But at the end of the day, nobody's gonna go through the VOD of your match and clip that out for you. You got to go do that. Do you know that Scump had a dope 4-piece to break a hill on Gunrunner? Then go back and get that clip afterwards and tweet it out later that week. It's about making sure that there's content for fans, because if your brand is exploding the way a lot of these CDL team brands are, you have to make sure that you're leveraging content well enough to feed that hunger, or else somebody else is going to. So that's I will thank you for coming to the TED Talk. I'll get off my soapbox. Video content, people. Damn.
You know, something like, just to add up, something I really like when Niski joined our team, he had a designer, graphic designer, that for every match of the LCS, for like before the match and after the match, he had a graphic ready to post social media, like a win or a loss. He was always there, like updating his fans on like what was gonna happen. And this is something like, it's so easy. You just, a simple tweet like give you so much followers and numbers, or like anything after a match. I tried, like when I was last year in the LCS, I tried to make all the players tweet after the LCS matches, and there was always one player, he never tweeted, never. And I was like, bro, come on, like I'm trying to help you, like come here, like it was hard. And at some point I was like, I guess I'll just have to give up. He doesn't want to. So like, it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Looks out window, and you're like, yeah.
I was gonna say it's really interesting. One thing that I noticed actually is Counter-Strike players, they, in general, don't tweet a lot, but they're very, very good at updating their fans on when they're playing and what the results are. And there are some Counter-Strike players out there that I see that's all they tweet out. They're like, you know, playing against, you know, Astralis today, and then like 5 hours later you see, okay, 0-3 against Astralis, like whatever it is, right? And that's the entire Twitter feed, and then all these tweets just pop off. Like everybody is like, there's like thousands of likes on these tweets, and that's all they tweet. I mean, just imagine if they tweeted more stuff, you know. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's the basis of it.
Yeah, no, so if players are watching the stream, use your social media. I know from other positions I've had as well, you know, marketability players. If you're approaching them, they're like, yeah, they have like 100,000 Twitter followers. Well, what's their engagement? Well, they tweet every 2 months, so can't really do much there. And so it's just like, so please use your social media. It's really important, especially in today's world.
And not just players, but like organizations.
Yeah.
Make sure your players tweet. Like guide them on like how they can leverage their social media platforms. Not just the players. The organizations also have a huge side on this. Sorry.
Yeah. Retweet. No. Well, yeah, is there anything else that you guys do want to say to everyone that's watching or everyone at home? Or is there anything that you guys are working on? I've really enjoyed this panel. You guys, like, you know, I respect you guys like so immensely, and I respect your work so much, and I've had so much fun. But I'll give the floor to you guys one last time, and if you do want to say anything, go ahead.
Shout out to Nate Shot.
Nate Shot.
My man. Yeah, shout out John Robinson, shout out our boys, shout out the mob, and of course shout out Nate. I mean,
No, but
Uh,
seriously.
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No.
No, I mean I don't really have too much in the way of
Make sure you guys
shout
follow
outs.
Dom on TikTok.
Yeah, follow.
Yeah, actually.
He's
I
popping
mean,
off.
if you want subpar D tier content,
Whoa,
go ahead.
whoa, whoa.
That's your decision. But not really so much of a shout out, but you know, I feel like there's a lot of people out there that haven't paid attention to Call of Duty yet. I feel like you should definitely watch the Call of Duty League when it comes around. Our home series, you know, not really live in person, but it's gonna be on May 8th through the 10th. You know, just watch the games. I promise you won't regret it. Even if you aren't like a fan of FPSs, the games are hype, the casters are hype. Like they bring that same energy that they do in like League of Legends that you expect. Like it's really really cool. So I suggest a lot of people check that out. They'll enjoy it. I promise. There's some legends in that game. It's fun stuff.
Nice.
You want to say something, Sandra?
I was just gonna thank you for hosting this and having us on this panel. It was a lot of fun, and I think I really look up to and respect everyone here a lot. You guys do amazing work, so it's an honor.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so once again, you can follow me at Kelsey Ramage on pretty much every social except Twitch. Follow me at Kelso. You can find John at Blackbeard, Mateus at Portillo, Dom on TikTok, and everything else at AODom, and Sandra at Wanderlust. So thank you guys so much for being here. Next week, we'll be back at 2 p.m. talking about esports agents, player representation, and law in general, and I will be moderating that as well, so I'm super excited about that because that's something I'm also very passionate about. But yeah, thanks again, and we'll see you next week. And have a good weekend, guys. Stay safe, stay inside, and stay healthy.
Take it easy, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
See ya.